market are miners who are selling to cover their interest expense, to cover their electricity bill, and for capital investment purposes. And right now they sell about 900 Bitcoin a day. That works out to be about
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Finance Wolf. In this video, Michael Saylor talks about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin can be used for many useful things. He talks a lot about keeping value, which is a very important use case. Another thing about Bitcoin that has caught Saylor's attention has to do with trust. The network is decentralized, which means that data is stored safely and transactions are honest. At first, the goal was to move money without using a trusted third party. However, Saylor says that we could go even further and keep the money in cyberspace forever, without the need for a trusted third party or many other things. Michael Saylor talks about it, so please watch the whole video, like and share it, and subscribe to our channel Finance Wolf.
$65 million a day. At the halving, it'll be only 450 Bitcoin a day, so 32 million a day of selling. The significance of the halving is it's kind of like if Warren Buffett said, I'm going to buy $9 billion of Bitcoin every year for the next 4 years, starting on April 20th. That's what the halving is. You can look at it as it's a natural demand for $35 million worth of Bitcoin a day, every day for the next 4 years. Or you could say Bitcoin is a market where there's $18 billion of supply available, and there's a demand that's more than that, but in a couple of days, there won't be 18 billion in supply, there'll be 9 billion in supply.
Yeah.
So if I told you I was going to cut the production of oil in half in 2 weeks, you would think the price would go up.
Yes.
And so that's the significance of the halving. There's not going to be any more than the 450 Bitcoin available from natural sellers. The natural buyers are people that want to store their life savings. They want a store of value, and they're wanting to save their capital. And when they buy, they'll buy and hold it for a decade. Maybe they'll hold it forever, but they'll hold it for a long, long time. And a lot of them are coming into the market because of the approval of these spot ETFs right now.
Yeah.
So they're the buyers. The miners are the sellers. The supply demand is the demand is going to increase. The supply is going to decrease. The price will have to adjust to find marginal sellers that want to sell at a higher price.
Okay. And it's funny that you mentioned Warren Buffett because he's a public person that positions himself against the Bitcoin. In some sense, you are betting against Buffett. Do you think it's a smart move?
I actually think that if Warren Buffett had 100 hours to consider Bitcoin, and if he wasn't in his 90s, if he was in his 60s, he probably would spend the time to learn it, and he'd be a big Bitcoin believer. Because Warren Buffett is an adherent of the buy and hold strategy, the HODL. He's probably the most famous hodler of his generation. He bought Coca-Cola and he still owns the stock. He would buy companies and hold them for 30 years. He said he's very famous for this phrase, if I wouldn't hold it for 10 years, you shouldn't hold it for 10 minutes. And that's the Bitcoin idea too. Buy something you're going to hold for 10 years. I think that people that get asked about Bitcoin but have only spent an hour studying it or a few minutes, they just misunderstand it. And because they misunderstand it, they're goaded to criticize it or dismiss it out of hand just because they misunderstand it. Most people that are skeptics or cynics, they think it's a currency that's going to replace the dollar and replace the banking system or replace governments. And on that basis, or they think or they confuse it with crypto tokens that are securities. And they either think it's a scam or they think it's a threat to the dollar. If you study it deeper, you realize it's property. And once you think of it as it's a digital building or it's digital property, I'm buying it instead of buying an apartment to rent out as retirement income, or I'm buying it instead of buying a building, or I'm buying it instead of buying an acre of land because I want to store my savings for 30 years. When you think of it like that, it becomes non-controversial. And I think if somebody said to Warren Buffett, I'm thinking about buying, a Bitcoin instead of buying an apartment to rent out.
So
What do you think? I think he would have a different
Yeah,
reaction.
yeah.
But you can't look to people, at the end of their career to embrace a new idea. When I'm 90 years old and you ask me about the telepathic implants that the teenagers are running around with to do holographic
You're gonna say I
projection,
don't want know about it.
I'm going to say, I don't need, I don't know.
But
Leave me alone.
what were you saying is that most of the people did not spend a lot of time learning about Bitcoin. Is that correct?
I've never met any critic that spent 100 hours studying Bitcoin. I don't think there is anybody in the world that spent 100 hours studying Bitcoin that's critical of it.
How many hours did you spend studying the currency?
I think when I looked at it for an hour or 2 or 10 hours, I thought, in 2030, I said, maybe it's going to go the way of online gambling. Maybe it'll get banned. When you spend up to 10 hours, you think, oh, maybe, and you're skeptical. But when I got to 100 hours, I started thinking, hey, this is better than gold. This is a really good idea, a digital asset. And when I got to 1,000 hours, I realized that this is probably the best asset. And then somewhere past a few thousand hours, you start to conclude this is an instrument of economic empowerment. This represents property rights for 8 billion people. This represents the singularity where engineering and science and mathematics crashes into economics and politics. And now economics is going to be a science or an engineering discipline, not an art or a pseudoscience. There are always cultural inclinations that people have, and it's hard to break them. If you've always done it a certain way and someone says do it a different way, a lot of times you need some kind of crisis. And in this particular case, the pandemic was the crisis, and it was a cultural crisis. It really did encourage people to rethink how they work. It was also a business crisis. It caused people to rethink what kind of business is a good business or not a good business. And it was a monetary crisis. Interest rates all around the world plunged, asset values spiked and exploded. You had a set of haves and have-nots. You had a whole set of businesses, hotels, restaurants, yoga studios, and they all suffered and they were shut down for a year. And you had another set of businesses, financial businesses, and they all prospered and they had a very, very good year. And so in the second quarter of 2020, we were reevaluating our business, and it became clear to me that if we wanted to prosper, we needed to become much more asset rich. And the company was, half of the value of the company was dollars, was currency, and the other half of the company was the operations of enterprise software. The problem with the US dollar treasury balance was it was yielding 0% interest. So it was a non-performing $600 million. And the other half of the company was worth about $600 million, but it was competing head on with Microsoft. And everybody that has to compete against Microsoft knows how difficult it is because they have every company on earth as their customer and they have enterprise licenses. They will basically sell you all of their stuff for the next 3 years. And so trying to actually sell a superior product or a pure product to a customer that's got Microsoft as a supplier is challenging.
Two people who used to be very well known in the crypto business are now facing jail time. There have been different lengths of time since the hearings for former FTX CEO Stam SBF Bankman fraud and former Binance CEO Champing C. Many people inside and outside of the crypto space are worried about how differently these two industry leaders have been treated by the U.S. legal system. Bankman Fried might be in his 50s when he gets out of jail, and he don't seem to have as many assets as Jay, who is supposed to be free by the end of the year and is worth an estimated $33 billion according to Forbes. But let's take a step back for a moment. Burger Fried was arrested in 2022 and extradited to the United States. He pleaded not guilty and was put under house arrest before being sent back to jail on charges of intimidating witnesses. He was charged in a 6E trial and given a 25-year prison sentence. In 2023, Jay was charged, pleaded guilty, and was released on bail. However, he was later given a 4-month prison term and will turn himself in a few days. The ex-CEO of FTX was charged with 7 crimes for stealing money from customers and lying to investors. Say was charged with 1 offense for not keeping up with Binance's anti-money laundering program. This is more of a regulatory violation than a criminal offense. SBF, on the other hand, was charged with wire fraud for taking billions of dollars in crypto custody with FTX to support Alum. As a former assistant attorney in the Eastern District of New York, Mark Beeney thinks that both crimes are serious, but he believes that SBF's crime was much worse. Many crypto users have speculated that CZ and SBF will work together on a sale while they are in prison, let alone in the same facility. The judge in the case hinted that the former FTX CEO may serve his sentence in a San Francisco Bay Area prison, or he may be allowed to stay in New York while his appeal is pending. If he is, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Finance Wolf. See you in the next movie.